2014. Historical ties. Crimea has a long history of being part of Russia, dating back to the 18th century when Catherine the Great annexed it. This history and cultural ties created a sense of Russian nationalism among the people of Crimea, which played a role in the annexation. Strategic importance. Crimea is strategically located, with access to the Black Sea and the Mediterranean. Russia sees it as a key location for its military presence and wants to maintain control over it to protect its interests in the region. Domestic politics. President Vladimir Putin was facing declining popularity in Russia, and the annexation of Crimea was seen as a way to rally support for his government and increase his popularity among the Russian people. The Euromaidan Revolution. In 2014, pro-European Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych was toppled from power following mass protests in Kiev, known as the Euromaidan Revolution. The Russian government saw this as a threat to its influence in Ukraine and decided to act. Fear of NATO expansion. The Ukrainian government's desire to join NATO, a military alliance dominated by Western countries, was seen as a threat to Russia's security. The annexation of Crimea was seen as a way to prevent Ukraine from joining NATO and moving further away from Russia's sphere of influence. In conclusion, the Russian annexation of Crimea was a result of a combination of historical ties, strategic importance, domestic politics, the Euromaidan Revolution, and fears of NATO expansion. The event marked a significant turning point in the relationship between Russia and the West, leading to increased tensions and sanctions. Russia's annexation of Crimea in 2014 was the result of several complex factors: historical ties, strategic importance, domestic politics, the Euromaidan Revolution, and fears of NATO expansion. Here's a detailed explanation of this. 1. Historical ties. Crimea has a long and rich history with Russia, and the region was part of the Russian Empire from 1783 to 1954. 1. During this time, many Russians settled in the Crimea, and the peninsula became a popular vacation spot for Russians. 1. This history and cultural ties gave rise to a sense of Russian nationalism among the Crimean people, which played an important role in the annexation. Strategic importance. Crimea is strategically located with access to the Black Sea and the Mediterranean Sea. It is also home to Russia's Black Sea Fleet, which is critical to Russia's naval power and access to the high seas. Russia considers control over Crimea essential to maintain its military presence in the region and protect its strengths. Domestic politics. Vladimir Putin was facing a decline in popularity in Russia, and the annexation of Crimea was seen as a way to rally support for the government and increase his popularity among the Russian people. The annexation was widely popular in Russia and was supported by the majority of the population. This helped boost Putin's approval ratings and strengthen his grip on power. Euromaidan Revolution. In 2014, pro-European Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych was overthrown from power after mass protests in Kiev, known as the Euromaidan Revolution. This change in government was seen as a threat to Russian influence in Ukraine, and the Russian government decided to act. The annexation of Crimea was seen as a way to secure Russian interests in the region and prevent Ukraine from moving away from Russia's sphere of influence. Fear of NATO expansion. The Ukrainian government's desire to join NATO, a military alliance dominated by Western countries, was seen as a threat to Russian security. Russia views NATO as a hostile organization, and the annexation of Crimea was seen as a way to prevent Ukraine from joining NATO and moving further away from Russia's sphere of influence. Protection of the Russian-speaking population. A large part of the population of Crimea is Russian, and in the aftermath of the Euromaidan Revolution, there were concerns about their treatment and rights. The annexation was seen as a way to protect the rights and interests of the Russian-speaking population in Crimea. Pressure from the West. The West has been pressuring Russia, especially in the form of economic sanctions, for several years leading up to the annexation. These pressures, combined with the factors listed above, may have contributed to Russia's decision to annex Crimea. In conclusion, it should be noted that Russia's annexation of Crimea was the result of a complex interaction of historical, political and strategic factors. The event marked an important turning point in relations with Russia and the West, with far-reaching consequences, including escalating tensions in Ukraine, economic sanctions and ongoing military conflicts. Thanks for watching.